I'm talking about Dmitry Chernikhovskii, a director of remote sensing methods, director of the Center for Development of Remote Methods in Agriculture. Dear colleagues, thank you for waiting for my presentation and you didn't walk away. Let me introduce myself. I am a forester, and in the past few years my colleagues participated in Rakurs conferences representing Rosles in Fork, large Russian company. Together with my colleagues, we did a number of projects relating to remote sensing data for forestry applications, for developing training programs and developing interpretation methods using Vision Map A3. Recently, we have rethought our vision and moved into a small company, Lesproekt, which is a software development company for forestry application, in particular for ArcGIS Plus, prevalent among forest rangers, forest tenants, and known for its simplicity. Now, what programs can be used for forest inventory and what can be done with it? I mean, what's the technology of remote sensing to address forest inventory tasks? Our preliminary overview, which we did 3 years ago, showed that to do forest inventory in a more detailed way for forest taxation, the best way is stereoscopic taxation of forest.
And for that, it is more convenient to use photogrammetric software. Similar cases were shown by specialists from Belarus, Croatia, and Russia. Most of them use PHOTOMOD Lite. And 3 years ago, we were also selecting the software which would fit our criteria, the ability to work in stereo mode and to be able to interpret certain types of trees that work with GIS and network mode. And as a basis, jointly with Rakurs company, we selected PHOTOMOD StereoDraw, which we reconfigured and still configuring based on our wishes, which are also changing and mutating with time. The main stages of the work with this product, which was called PHOTOMOD StereoMeasure, to do our tasks and assignments of stereo interpretation of forests. Initially, our main demands for this product were the ability to work with Vision Map A3 that our company bought in 2013. Next stage in 2014-2015 was the introduction of the developed technology at a broader scale and equipment of a whole room with stereo monitors and module of PHOTOMOD StereoMeasure, training of operators, and doing our state contract. At the moment, we're continuing improving the module PHOTOMOD StereoMeasure by expanding its functionality to do stereoscopic interpretation for forests, and now we have new wishes for aerial photography and satellite imagery and some other new ideas. At the first stage, we wanted to include into the new module some of the geoinformation functions and the possibility to work with stereoimagery from vision map A3 from different swaths or different roads, which are the quality important for stereoscopic interpretation. And one thing which sounded exotic to us at the moment, the ability to work with stereo ortho photos, which were made based on the materials of vision map A3, and implementation of some of the functions which are important for interpretation of forest parameters. Here you can see an example of the function of PHOTOMOD StereoMeasure, which helps us see the consistency of the canopy of trees, which shows the actual volume and capacity of forests. Here you can see some of the examples of our work with large stereos, so stereo ortho images, based on the materials of vision map A3. You can see some of the buttons in PHOTOMOD and the results as a result of the work with stereo. You can see the increases in the sections in the forest, which help us do contour interpretation for different objects of forests at a larger area than the regular SCLF functions. Now we want to include into our PHOTOMOD StereoMeasure new algorithms of in-camera analysis of the symbols of deciphering or indicators of deciphering based on the results of sample areas that we'll use for interpretation, and some of the new ideas on how to improve other functions. As far as the practical use of this module is concerned, PHOTOMOD StereoMeasure, at previous conferences, my colleagues and I spoke about technology from imagery to project, which sounds very similar to the name of this conference, from imagery to map. Again, we worked with vision map camera and doing the contour interpretation of forests from in the environment of PHOTOMOD StereoMeasure, and then we would shape up the forest geoinformation system, and the red color shows the core thing which is done by the PHOTOMOD system. The main detailed characteristics of the forests during the taxation with the use of stereo analysis, taxation indicators, categories of lands, varieties of trees, and other specific characteristics which are interpreted or defined or identified, detected in done by photogrammetry methods and analytical interpretation based on the done by the trained specialists based on different dependencies, graphs, and indicators of interpretation. In the past few years, we've done the following practical things, like we developed this technology from imagery to project. Then we trained specialists on forest stereoscopic interpretation. Some of the regional branches of Russian forest Inforg in 2015, this technology was introduced at a broader range in one of the institutes of Strogo-Krasinsk forestry, and also our specialists developed a package of instructions and documents and the working rules of operation for the interpretation specialists, and we developed methodology and guidelines for aerial and satellite images, and some proposals on how to further improve some of the sections of the forestry instructions. And now, jointly with our colleagues, working based on the private company, are continuing to introduce this technology and working with particular sites now in Karelia, Republic of Russia. Next important subject for which the use of PHOTOMOD StereoMeasure might be relevant and could have mass introduction potential is the contour interpretation during the taxation of forests. In other words, when we can divide forests into elementary forest compartments. Unfortunately, in most of the companies who do this, the work in stereo mode is part of the past. They used mechanical stereoscopes. They worked with analog images. Now the images are acquired digitally, and even if the images are good, as a rule, specialists get only fragments of orthophoto where they do separation based on color characteristics. We think it is a big mistake because you need to work only in stereo mode because of a number of key reasons. Because the boundaries of a forest in mono mode are very hard to detect. Only very contrasty areas can be identified, like forest cutting areas or forested areas or wetlands, but the actual forests on mono images are very hard to distinguish. Also, on a easily detectable section, usually we see large or generalized compartments, but for a smaller division, you need scrupulous, punctual analysis in stereo mode. And most of the taxation indicators and the symbols or indicators that you can tell trees from each other would be more feasible to do only during stereoscopic analysis, which can be done using the StereoMeasure. Here on the left, you can see an example, a colored image where one contour is more or less similar. On the right, in an anaglyphic stereo, you can see the border which divides this section into two, which are different by height, by composition of trees, and as a result, by the volume of timber per hectare. It is maybe not the most illustrative example, but there are many of them. And I will repeat that we categorically believe that without a stereo mode, forest taxation by any method, actually, there are two only, land-based and remote one, would be erroneous at best. The next direction of work that I would like to talk about is about national inventory of forests, which is done by many countries for quite some time. In Russia, it's been done recently, and it is still a matter of a lot of discussions. The main task for state inventory of forests is rough estimate or valuation of forests in big parts of the country, of the whole country, for strategic assessment and decision making for forest management, but not for any issuance of economic instructions or decisions. Our group of specialists, as part of a research project, developed a technology for state inventory of forests based on the materials of satellite stereo imagery for northern and northeastern part of our country, where the land-based taxation and sampling doesn't make any sense because it's too expensive and senseless, economically speaking. And there we suggest, for state inventory of forests, we suggest using the method of photostatistic inventory of forests, photostatistical inventory of reserve forests, which was used quite broadly during the 1980s, 1990s in the Soviet Union, based on the materials of satellite stereo imagery. This method is based on the use of different resolution of images. The light green color shows the whole area of the site, and to split this into compartments or portions, we use medium resolution images, and the grid shows the location of photo samples. For each photo sample, we do satellite images of ultra-high resolution, spatial resolution. Sometimes we have some red dots, which are land-based sample plots. And to assess these prospects, we also ordered 7 scenes, 10 by 10 kilometers, satellite images in different parts of the country, which we believed sometimes could be conditionally hardly accessible. And in that area, specialists set up sample plots, and then interpretation and detection was done by PHOTOMOD StereoMeasure. We did interpretation of the images for GOI satellite images, and we compared it with the known results of land-based taxation. The errors, which are shown here, are quite optimistic. They're within accessible errors according to our forestry instruction, meaning that this method can be used quite easily. And in conclusion, after describing everything that I did, I can tell that the main prospect about the use of PHOTOMOD StereoMeasure for inventory of forests, the technology of forest interpretation based on the materials of Vision Map A3 and Vision Map A3 Edge, and the module of PHOTOMOD StereoMeasure, which can be used for taxation of forests, and which we are implementing already for the 2nd year already in our daily real projects. StereoMeasure could also prove to be a good instrument for mass projects of contour interpretation of forests, independent of their methods of their taxation. And also, this module can be used for national forest inventory. This is our suggestion. Actually, now there are a lot of discussions about what should be the national inventory of forests in Russia. It's clear that it shouldn't be like what it is now, because now it's wasting a state budget, basically, and there are many ideas how to improve it. Our proposal is one of these improvable strategies. Unfortunately, now, aside from me here, there are no more colleagues who were present as part of the bigger group in the previous Rakurs conferences. What I'm telling you about now was also overviewed at a number of other conferences. We try to make publications in specialized journals, and also there are discussions on our popular forestry forum, Greenpeace. That's it. That's all I had to tell you, colleagues. Thank you very much. As long as we are really pressed for time, that's why I would like to thank our speaker on behalf of our conference. It was a very good and enjoyable presentation. I think we'll have time later on to discuss the results of this presentation, how to implement this technology at a broader scale in the Russian forest.